Welcome back to the Commanders Declassified Podcast, your favorite podcast on all things Washington Commanders. We are back in the lab. Man, there is so much going on in Commanders football. And for the first time in a long time, 95% of it is on the field, and that's all we're hearing about. It feels so good. I can't believe it, man. It just makes me all that much more excited for the season to come. And we can't start without an update on our quarterback. Tonight, we are going to talk about defense. This is going to be all about defense.
Oh, yeah.
With the exception of a quick Sam Howell update on his progress, because that matters so much to this team's season. And we're going to go from there. Eric's going to join us in just a minute when we get into that defensive conversation. But, Brian, I'm going to turn it over to you, my friend. Talk to us about the latest and greatest with Sam Howell.
So last week finished up the first week of OTAs, and just like you said, all eyes were on Sam Howell. In the first 2 days, he looked good, he looked sharp, completing passes, he understood the concepts, he knew where to go. The third day, which was Thursday, was what they call team blitz. So it's essentially the defense is blitzing on every play, and it's really about the offense learning to pick up the blitz, learning their assignments, who has who, when the blitz comes, where is the blitz coming from, and so on, right? Having a plan for the blitz. Usually this day is a tough day for the offense, any offense, because the defense has the advantage. They're just blitzing every time. Hey, the offense did struggle a little bit, but Sam Howell was able to kind of understand some of these concepts, get the guys lined up, but also the offensive linemen, right? They understood where they needed to go, who they needed to pick up, which is a big, big contrast to last year, where when you saw our offense get pressured, no one knew what to do. Guys were running free, and really the offense just could not function at all. So while there were absolutely some struggles, he was much better equipped to handle it. But a lot of that has to do with Bieniemy actually preparing these guys for these situations, which, hey, not to dump on Scott Turner or to talk about him, but I think it's clear that there was no plan for pass rushers. I mean, how many times did we talk about it on the pod after games? We had no plans for pass rushers, especially rookie pass rushers. We just kind of ignored these guys over and over again. So the offense did better in that regard. Certainly, they got it taken to them a little bit by the defense. So, the offense may have looked sharp in the first couple of days, but the defense probably won that day. But again, Sam Howell looked very impressive. Made a lot of big throws, big time throws, certainly looked the part. Didn't look like he was lost. Today, we got some additional reports. Again, Sam Howell looked sharp again, but he also had some mistakes, right? There were some overthrows. There were, maybe a little bit of holding the ball too long in certain situations again. But for the most part, he completed his passes. He got the ball out on time in the 2-minute drill, which is kind of what they focused on today at OTAs. He completed his passes. He looked sharp. He got the guys in and out of the huddle. And 2-minute offense is important, and it's something that we haven't seen a lot of around here in the last couple of years with Scott Turner. So if we can get an offense that actually can perform in the 2 minutes, run the 2-minute offense, that'll put pressure on the defense. And that's something that we just haven't had in our toolbox in a while. So I think, from the first week and even up until today, Sam Howell's progressed nicely. Now, this doesn't mean that he hasn't made mistakes. He has. He threw an interception in the red zone last week to Percy Butler. Ill-advised. I think he tried to probably fit the ball in a tight window. He thought he could do it, and he paid the price for it. And Bieniemy got on him a little bit about that. And he even told him to go run after the interception, which I don't know if that's a great idea, but hey, I understand Bieniemy's point. Hey, you really need to be more careful with the football in the red zone. So certainly he's progressing nicely. And, some of the things that, we've heard, especially listening to Logan Paulson, Sam has looked the part of the, earning the first team reps. There was a lot of concern about, hey, who's going to get the first team reps? Is it him? Is it Brissett? Does he? Yes. Should he? No, we don't know. He certainly has looked like he, has at least earned those and doesn't look out of place with the first team or anything like that. So mostly positive. But again, we don't have pads on, so we'll see how this goes once we get pads in a couple weeks.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, if everything was positive about Sam Howell, I'd be concerned that they're not challenging him enough, right?
Oh, yeah.
You really want to pressure test your quarterback at this point in the season, especially somebody in Sam Howell's situation.
Yeah.
It's okay to struggle. What you're looking for at this point is competency, right? And I
Yep.
think from a competency perspective, he is showing that he is a competent quarterback within the offense with what he's being asked to do and the defensive situation he's facing right now. That's it. That's all. So if we were finding out right now, like we sort of started to hear about Carson Wentz this time last year,
Ooh.
chose to ignore it, but we heard it, right? That he wasn't picking it up. It's a little bit of a struggle. Things aren't flowing. It's not natural. Then I'd say we're going to have a controversy. But right now, I think he's doing a good job of being competent in his role as QB1 through this part of the OTA session. And like you said, when we get pads, they start ringing bells, then we'll take the next step and see if we can handle that too.
And I in this part here, and I want to get your thoughts on this. It's not even Sam Howell related, but something that Logan Paulson brought up, and he was doing his best to be kind of fair and nice to Scott Turner, and it was how night and day the offense looked in terms of how prepared they were. Again, they had the team blitz last week, and that's a day that the offense pretty much loses, right? Because they're getting pressured constantly. But the offense this year had a plan. They understood what they needed to do when the blitz came. And that goes to preparation. That goes to the offensive coordinator teaching the guys, here's what you do in this situation. Last year, that wasn't the case. The guys got pressured. They didn't know what to do. And we saw that play out in the games, right? Detroit pressured us. The team just fell apart, right? The offense didn't do anything until the fourth quarter. Then they started to come back in garbage time. What do you think about that and just how unprepared they were last year? And they were just okay with it. They were like, all right, let's roll out into the game one. Like that makes me angry a little bit. Like, how could you let that product go out almost like a food manufacturer and say, oh, that's just a little tiny piece of glass. It's okay. Put it on the shelf anyway. Like that's just
I don't know if they were okay with it, but they didn't know what to do about it. They weren't skilled enough at their craft as coordinators, offensive coordinators, and offensive staff to do anything about it. And that's the issue. There was nothing else that Scott Turner could do other than his bucket of plays that he called and he ran, and that was all. And that's why, sometimes it's great to find the young coordinator who hasn't been through the fire already, but isn't jaded either, and they just has new innovative ideas. But other times you get guys that just completely lack experience. And that's what we got in Scott Turner, a guy who lacked experience. And it was obvious every time it was time to show that you knew what you were doing, and he could not do it, right? He couldn't adjust. He couldn't set the run game. He couldn't set the blocking scheme. He couldn't, just get the guys prepared to play football. And everybody saw it. Ron Rivera and his loyalty, it took, 3 or so years, but it was obvious year number one. Now, he's out the door, but at the end of the day, you gotta be able to assess that, right, and make the tough decisions. And that was a tough decision Ron should have made a while ago. It doesn't mean that Scott Turner's career is completely over. I think he's in Minnesota or somewhere right now. I forget where he is.
Las Vegas.
Vegas, yeah.
Is it Vegas? Okay. He has time to learn. He's still a younger guy. He can still learn and add things to his game. He needed to be mentored by a very senior offensive coordinator, teach him the ins and outs of the game. Because it didn't seem like Scott Turner knew the game of football, not at the professional level. And look, like I said, he's young. There's time. But we have a guy that was a coordinator for 10 plus years under one of the greatest, probably a top 5 coach of all time in Andy Reid, and probably a top 3 offensive coach in the NFL history, right? So what I'm seeing from this is that Eric Bieniemy is applying what he's learned to what he's trying to implement. Now, you always have to be cautious because it's your own team, it's your own defense. They're not trying to hurt you. They're not really trying to crush you, things like that. So we got to see, right? We still have to wait and see. But again, that word competency is coming into play. The coordinator looks competent in his role. He has a game plan that he wants to execute every time he's out on the field with the guys. At this point in the offseason, that is all I can ask for. That's it.
I don't know about this. Scott Turner needs a mentor thing. His dad is one of the top 10 offensive, he was a top-notch offensive coordinator for years. That's about as good a mentor as you can have. I think Scott's just not good at calling plays. I think he has a skill. I think passing game coordinator is probably the right job for him, because I think he's got some solid play designs where he doesn't have to actually call them. He should not be allowed near the running game at all. I think, passing game coordinator, if he can just weed out those like plays that take 5 minutes to develop, the triple, fake handoff plays, maybe he'll have something there. But I don't see it with him as an offensive coordinator, and I don't think he's going to get much better than he was last year. That's just my opinion, though. I think it's pretty obvious I'm not a big Scott guy, and I have never. And this is saying something as a fan of this team, never been as frustrated as I was during that Detroit game last season, when they just it was so obvious that they knew everything that was coming and we just couldn't do anything. That was just humiliating. It was, and you're losing to the Lions. Terrible. I want to watch that from my memory. I'm not jumping on the Bieniemy train just yet, because it's, OTAs, and we hear this every year to an extent. And it's something new and different. We'll see. I've been a supporter of Sam Howell for quite some time, and I think Bieniemy knows what he's doing. I'm just waiting. I got to wait. Maybe we'll go to a training camp practice, or maybe the team will invite us out to OTAs again, Ellie, and we can get a look. We can get a look at the team a little closer. But I got to take everything I hear at this point with a grain of salt.
I love that level-headedness, because that's the right place to be. But I love the fact that at least Hal's giving folks something to be excited about. After last year, really every year prior to that, under the Rivera tenure, from the quarterback position, there's been absolutely nothing to get excited about except for the underdog story of Taylor Heineke. But you knew it was a matter of time. But he gave you some moments of hope and things like that.
Yeah, I see Sam Howell. I think I've said it before. He's a lottery ticket. And we're in that period of time, like before the drawing, where you buy that Powerball ticket and you're just like, man, what if?
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens when the drawing hits. But the drawing hasn't happened yet. You're still in that anticipatory time frame. So I'm gonna enjoy that. But I'm not buying into all the hype just yet. But I do like him. I've liked him all along, and I think he's got a lot of potential. So
and we're not going to make this an offensive podcast, but this is why I love those joint practices with the Ravens. You can really start to get litmus tests going to bring. They're an aggressive team. They have a strong secondary. I've had historically a strong secondary, good rushers, things like that. And those things tend to get pretty heated and pretty tense. And so they're not going to take it easy on us. So I'm super excited. Now, granted, the Ravens weren't great in the secondary last year, but I think they have invested some draft capital in there the last couple of years that I think will certainly make them a little bit better. But you get a real life test, and man, I could not be more happy for that. All right, this is going to be a defensive episode, and 13 minutes in, we're going to talk defense. I swear we are. So look here, our offense. Now, a lot of that was aided by the fact that our offense kept the ball for what felt like 88% of the game with that ball control offensive system that Scott Turner was running. But this year, we figure we're going to throw the ball a little bit more. Things are going to move a little quicker, a little bit more fast-paced offense, things like that. So our defense is going to be under a lot more pressure, I think, this year. And again, statistically, defenses don't get better over time. They typically regress a little bit. So now we got to do some analysis on the defense, and we're going to do tonight to see where we think we'll end up from a defensive perspective. All right, we're going to start on the defensive line. You guys know that we have Chase Young, whose fifth-year option did not get picked up. He was a number 2 overall pick, so he's not guaranteed, but he has a fifth-year option that the team can elect to pick up. They did not. We have Montez Sweat as our other edge rusher, and he's a very solid pass rusher. He's not flashy, he's not electric, but he's a very solid pass rusher. We have our interior defensive line with Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen, both of whom have proven themselves in the NFL and have earned ridiculous contracts. I say ridiculous in a good way, but they are paid. They are here to stay. We also have John Ridgeway, who came on a little bit last year, an aggressive defensive tackle. And then we also have Fedarian Mathis, the draft pick from last year, who we didn't really get to see much of. Now, let's see. Brian, take us on the interior defensive line. Talk to us about that unit a little bit, sort of what you expect from them. Let's talk about initially the impact versus the run and the interior defensive line.
Yeah, so you've got to start with the two studs right in the middle, and that's Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne. Both of those guys are coming off big years. Both had Pro Bowl years, just like you said. Daron Payne got paid the year before Jonathan Allen got paid. Those two are some of the best defensive tackles in the NFL, and I expect them to have another strong year. This will be a big year for Daron Payne to follow that up, right? He had 11 and a half sacks or maybe 11 sacks. That's a lot. He hadn't had that many before, so we'll see. He needs to have another big year, right, and generate a lot of pressure. John Allen's consistent 8-9 sacks just about every year. He had 5 All-Pro votes last year. We'll see if he can crack and get his first All-Pro, selection this year. Maybe get his third Pro Bowl in a row. But those two will be dominant against the run. They are going to cause a lot of disruption. Offenses are going to have to game plan against them. Now, here's the big thing with these guys. They played a lot of snaps last year, right? Fedarian Mathis got hurt, I want to say in the very first game, maybe like the second series of the first game, and he was out, and there wasn't much behind him. Ridgeway, I don't know if we had either signed him yet or if he was even, thought about playing that much that he did later on in the year. So those guys played a lot of snaps, a lot more than either of them had played in their careers throughout the entire season. A big part with defensive tackles, guys being that large, 300 plus pounds, you want to keep them fresh. You want to keep the snaps, down. So it will be important for Fedarian to play a lot this year and be healthy. Ridgeway is actually still rehabbing from his injury that he got in the last game of the year against the Cowboys last year. So hopefully he'll get back by training camp, and then we sign another defensive tackle, Abdullah, from the Falcons last year, who was a solid player as well. So we're going to need all of those guys, those interior players, to really kind of help solidify that run, because
that's right. There you go. I look forward to what the defensive it should be a really strong unit. Eric, do you want to touch on the exterior defensive linemen or edge rushers there? What you expect from them in the running rush?
Yeah, so this is a year you've got your two starting defensive ends, Chase Young and Montez Sweat, both going into the last year of their deals, both looking for paydays. I would expect two guys that are really hungry this year that want to eat. I know people are making a big deal out of Chase Young not being at OTAs. Yeah, he's coming off a huge injury. He doesn't have a long-term deal. It's a smart thing for him to do to skip OTAs. It just is. You don't risk injury when you've already had a catastrophic injury. It's, I think he's making the right move. As much as people don't like it, this isn't high school football where you got to be there for your teammates. This is a guy who's trying to prolong his career and trying to maximize his earning potential. I got nothing wrong with that. He's got to play well this year. I think he shows up. This isn't going to be a situation where he shows up out of shape and isn't ready to play. I think Chase Young's going to be ready to roll this year. And I think he's going to have a solid year. I don't think he's going to ever do anything that's at this point. I think enough of the fan base has turned on him. I don't know, outside of being like Myles Garrett or, just a top-notch defensive end who puts up monster numbers. I just don't think he's going to win back the fan base. And honestly, I think this is his last year in DC with his extension not being picked up. I don't see him coming back. And a smart move would be, if he starts off well, maybe trade him. But it's not going to happen because Ron Rivera is a status quo guy. He's not going to make any changes like that in the season. Montez Sweat, on the other hand, look for Montez Sweat to have a season like Daron Payne had last year. I think Sweat is in for a massive year. And he may also have one foot out the door because he might price himself out of the market because he is a stellar defensive end. And he has all the potential in the world. The sacks haven't always been there for him. He is a great run defender. He's really underrated run defender. And I think that he's been close on a lot of sacks. This is a year much like Payne, where last season where, he sees that green right around the corner. And I think he's going to have a huge, huge year. So, I can see I mean, I can see 14, 15 sacks out of Montez Sweat this year. I think he's going to be legit this year. And he's going to be one of those PFF, like top graded defensive players at the end position. I really think he's going to be great. I'm excited for KJ Henry to see what this coaching staff can get out of him, because he has everything you need. All the ingredients are there. He's just got to put it together, and it's up to our coaching staff to get the best out of him. You know, if he can have any kind of an impact this year, great. You got the rest of the guys, the James Smith-Williams guys. Shaka Tony's obviously suspended for the year. And then you've got the back of the roster guys that are there. The what's the guy's name? The other James Smith-Williams and the other one.
Casey too.
Two-Hill's there. Yeah, Two-Hill's going to be a solid edge rusher. He's been a good backup. F.A. Obata's here. All these guys are going to be fighting for roster spots, and you're going to have a solid rotation. But I think the two frontline guys are in for a big year, and I wouldn't be surprised for either of them to be here in 24, but that's a 2024 problem. This year, I think we're going to have a good year from our edge rushers.
Did you say 17 or 18 sacks from Montez Sweat?
No, I said 14 or 15. I would love to see 17 or 18. 14 or 15 to me seems like a solid number for him.
Yeah, that's an impressive total there for Montez Sweat, if he can figure that out.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, if we can get that, then I think that's fantastic. So, hey, Brian, let me see here, man. Linebackers, Cody Barton, Jamin Davis. What are you expecting from them in run support this year?
Not a whole lot. Unfortunately, this is a weak spot for us, is the linebacking core. This is a big year for Jamin Davis. This will be his third year. He's come along slowly. I know a lot of people thought he had a really good season last year. I thought he had a solid season. I didn't think it was great or anything like that. Certainly not befitting of a first-round pick. A lot more is expected of you than just kind of solid. I think if a running back gets past our defensive line, he can really make hay in our defense, because we run so many safeties and cornerbacks with this defense that running backs can really gain some yards once they get past that first line. And Cody Barton, I don't really see making that great of an impact. Jamin Davis certainly has the ability to make the impact, but will he? His progression has seemed pretty slow, kind of minimal increments of progression. So it would be great if this third year is, the light bulb goes on and he makes a huge jump, and we're talking about a Pro Bowl type year, because that's what we really need from Jamin Davis. It's hard to see it because he hasn't really progressed on that type of track yet. But that's what we want from him, and that's what we're going to need from him if we want this defense to kind of take that next step and be, one of the best in the NFL. We're really good. We were really good this past season, but if we want to get better and do better.
Yeah, I think if there's one position that is going to hold this defensive team back, or has the potential this defensive team back, it's linebackers, because Jamin Davis, as Brian said, is really one of those guys that we're not sure what he's going to be. The up arrow was trending up last year, pardon the redundancy, but he was trending up last year. However, there was still such an opportunity for improvement that I don't think you can clearly say he's on his way to being one of the top backers in the league. It's going to take a lot of work this offseason. I'm sure he's putting it in. He's a hardworking guy by all accounts, but you just have to see it. You just have to see it in game action, and you just have to be able to prove out the theory that he can actually be more than what he's been. None of us know a ton about Cody Barton. We believe he's going to be an effective linebacker, but the evidence just isn't there at this point. So he had a solid season in Seattle last year. A lot left to be desired, though, and hopefully he can fulfill his destiny in a Commanders uniform to become one of the top backers in the league. Let's see. And we are having a little bit of audio issues tonight, so I do apologize for that. And we're going to bring back Eric in a minute. But let's talk about pass defense and our linebackers. So Jack Del Rio's defense, everybody plays everywhere, right? You'll see some of the advanced stats that show our defensive ends out in pass coverage sometimes. Our linebackers will line up at safety sometimes. They'll split out the slot corner, etc. I thought Jamin Davis did a pretty decent job of this when he was asked. He made a couple of plays, and I'm forgetting the game exactly, but I believe it was like near the goal line. He made a relatively decent pass breakup, but
Yeah.
I would not call it his specialty at this point in time. But that's really the benefit of some of the defensive skill groups we can put in the game with the secondary that we have and some of the flexibility from some of the players that we got in the draft that we can use to supplement the linebackers in pass coverage. But we do need to see more from Jamin Davis in particular, lined up with some of the bigger tight ends. Yes, I know Martin's going to take on some of that responsibility. Curl will occasionally, but really, as a linebacker, we want to see Jamin Davis on the field for all three downs, given his athletic prowess, his speed, his strength, everything like that. We want to see him turn pass coverage into a strength for him because this team could really benefit from that. Cody Barton, I don't know enough about to say whether or not he's going to be excellent in pass coverage, but he's an athletic linebacker, and I think that matters, and I think that will help. So linebacker for me is really the biggest question mark on this roster right now, on the defensive side of the ball anyway. And then we have our safeties, and Brian's favorite safety, Bobby McCain, got released.
Bobby McCain.
And he's no longer with this program, and so we don't have to watch that happen anymore. I thought McCain was serviceable. He was not elite by any stretch of the imagination, but I thought he was relatively serviceable. We got some new guys in town now. We got Cam Curl's always going to be Cam Curl. I have no concerns about Cam Curl. I think Cam Curl is going to earn a big money deal, but we can talk about next year, right? And maybe he gets a deal in camp, and if so, then we'll be happy to support him in that, and that he's going to be with us in the long term. But I have no issue assuming that on Sundays he's going to come in and play his best because that's just what he does. He's that kind of guy. Now, who's going to line up next to Cam Curl? At this point in time, we believe that to be Derek Forrest. Derek Forrest was an absolute force in the second half of the season last year, right? He came on. Actually, he was there, relatively early on in the season last year, but he was an absolute stud for us. Derek Forrest is a baller. He can play. He creates turnovers when nobody else was doing that last year. So I am supremely excited about Derek Forrest in the secondary and what he's going to bring and what he's going to do for us, Brian.
Yeah, this group of safeties that we have.
Brian said our audio issues are continuing, but we'll get it sorted out. But Derek Forrest is a turnover machine. He's a hard hitter. He is a tone setter in the secondary, and we need that. I'm not going to say he's like Sean Taylor level, but he really brings a lot of that enforcer type of mentality. You saw him blow up ETN last year. What an amazing play. One of my favorite plays on the defensive side of the ball last year. I think that he is on such an incline in terms of his progression that he may take steps to be an even better safety than Cam Curl this year. I am so excited to see what Derek Forrest can do. And then, of course, you have Forbes and you have Martin, and I'm sure they'll rotate a little bit, in and out of the lineup based on what the need in the offensive packages are. But I look forward to seeing all that they can do because I think that we could get really, really, I don't want to say lucky, but we may really hit our stride as a defense this year. And if we do that, this is going to be a really effective season for us because the more weight we can take off of the offense, the better. The offense is going to be a young at the quarterback position. And I think we still got some things to figure out running back, but I just think that defensively, we have the capability to really be something special as long as we play within ourselves. So I'm very excited to see that. Once again, we apologize for the audio issues. We'll be back at it next week. Make sure you are locked in, subscribed. If you did follow us on Apple Podcasts, make sure you go out and search for Commanders Declassified again. Look for the one that's publishing new episodes and follow that one. All our YouTube supporters, we appreciate you guys and everybody listening to us on any kind of audio platform, man. You guys are the best. Thank you for tuning in for another week. Me and the rest of the guys will be back next week with better internet. Somebody holler at Verizon because they're not getting it done. Somebody holler at Comcast, Xfinity because they're not getting it done. But look, we're going to bring it to you no matter how we got to do it. Check out our last 5 things video. It was 5 questions that Eric the Enemy needs to answer. We got some more 5 things videos coming out. We know you guys love those. Anyway, this is LE. Later for the rest of the fellas, and we'll catch you on. Peace.